Thanks everyone for joining our talk. Just a little bit about this exhibition. So last year, Brian and I did the first of what I think will be a three-part anthology of horror in art. And the idea for the initial exhibition came out of Brian and I's shared love for horror movies, kind of horror content, just the macabre in general. And the first iteration had more kind of traditional horror imagery, whether it be from more contemporary commercial like films or things like Halloween costumes or just images of ghosts and demons. With this iteration, over the summer, I wrote an essay that dealt with the idea of being haunted by images, by history, and it really, once you start seeing something out in the world or start thinking about it, you start seeing it more and more. And I kept seeing this word haunted or haunting being repeated. And it really made me think about how we're living right now, where, it seems like we've regressed, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years into the past, don't really seem to be capable of learning from our history, but the history is there. So this knowledge that we've kind of been through this cycle before, but aren't learning from it, is this idea of being haunted. So we had a couple of artists that we had already been wanting to work with previously, and then a couple of people that or a few people that we already knew. And then I guess there's two people in the show that are brand new to us. One of them is Staver, who we met through Jeff Wigman, who was in the initial horror show last year. And then Tatu Gustafsson, who's not with us tonight. He is in spirit, though. We are haunted by his photographs in the corner of the gallery. He is a Finnish artist. So we sort of started with Tatu and Ever Baldwin, and then of course our dear friend Luke, who we adore, and then Celia, who we also adore and just left us recently, and then James and Molly. I mean, we adore all these people. So I was hoping we could get started, if you guys wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves, and then we'll kind of go one by one through everybody's work. So maybe Staver, can we start with you? Is that okay?
Oh man, the new kid on the block. Okay, yeah.
Where are you from? Where have you been?
Oh God, where am I going? I have to like journal all these questions every day. So hi, I'm Staver. I also go by S online because my students call me S. So now it's just I am Staver. I am S. I'm from Brooklyn, live in Brooklyn. Shocker, the kid with a mullet lives in Brooklyn. Who would have thought? I went to Micah for undergrad. I got to go back to New York to go to Hunter College for grad school. What up, MFAs? Yeah. What up? And where am I going? I don't to sleep after back to the studio. Yeah, that's me. Scorpio Sun, Aries Moon, Libra Rising, and loves to paint spooky monsters and stuff. Is there anything else I need to say about myself?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. I'm not great at talking, if you could tell.
I'm just going in the order you guys are on screen. Luke, how about you go next?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Lucas Harnden. Also Luke is fine. Either one. They're kind of interchangeable now, it seems. I'm an artist, an educator, and was very happy to be included in this show. I had just the works in mind, and it came out of a nice conversation that Danielle and I had regarding ghostly themes. So yeah, just really happy to be here. I'm currently living in Los Angeles, and yeah, I spend a lot of time here. From Dallas, I moved in 2017, but I had spent quite a bit of time in Dallas making art, running artist-run gallery spaces, and yeah, it's just still a kind of home to me. So it really meant a lot to be included in this show. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Brian. And looking forward to speaking more and hearing more about everybody's work.
So Celia.
Hi everyone. I'm echoing Lucas here. I'm so happy, Daniel and Brian, for the invitation. So I'm a French filmmaker making gradually more experimental films. I did my MFA at St. Charles and Martins in London, and then I was in UTD for 2 years before dropping out of my PhD there, and now I'm back in St. Charles and Martins continuing that PhD. And my work, so I'm between Marseille and London right now, and yeah, I guess my work weaves film and poetry and installation, and is centered on rituals and existential quests that the subjects of my film wander into.
Excellent. Okay, I'm gonna just tilt the camera here so we get. There you are, James. You might have to speak up because your piece is very noisy.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I've gotten used to teaching over it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm James. I live in Dallas, and I'm an artist and sound artist and composer. I also run a space here called New Media Contemporary, and yeah, I had a lot of fun making a piece about haunting and not really doing it in a horror way. So just my work tends to be more political most of the time. So
Now we're gonna go over here to.
Oh, hi.
There you're
Hello.
kind of in the light. This is Molly.
Yes, I'm Molly. Born and raised in Dallas. I'm a UTD alumni. I actually recently graduated back in May. I'm an artist as well. My medium has mostly been painting, and one of my paintings is in this exhibition. But I got into film, and that's the film right there. That's the stuff. And yeah, film's been my passion as of late. And where am I going? I'm going to film, probably.
Awesome. So we actually have 3 of Celia's films showing back to back on a loop. It's 2 full films and then the first part of a 2-part film. So right now we have one of the films playing, and this is kind of the central one to the exhibition. It's the longest one. Celia, I was wondering if you could talk about this film. It deals with a young woman who believes herself to be possessed by her sister's ghost and travels to an island to meet with a witch to perform rituals in order to communicate with the ghost. And as the film progresses, the rituals become, it reminds me a lot of Mulholland Drive, where the 2 female characters kind of become like increasingly intertwined, and their relationship, you don't really quite know the framework of it, but it gets more and more enmeshed.
Yes, it's funny because when I did the interview for the retrograde piece on the exhibition, the person I did with called their relationship problematic, and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't see it that way, but no, it's true. So Afra and Heredia, as you said, the main character thinks to be her sister's ghost, but in the end, all this the horror part of it is really more internalized, and it's not so much uh, a horror film per se, but this whole journey of the travel of this young woman and the rituals she performs with the witch uh, are almost an excuse to their relationship, the bond they form through this quest, and it's a, I guess, like in a lot of my films, this relationship is really in a constant oscillation between moments of unease and moment of warmth, and so there's a very fragile balance in that regard, and the film is really so is not so, I guess it's loosely narrative around this journey, and then articulated around these three rituals, and with an original soundtrack by Danish musician Frederick Meyer, who's also known as Pius Mary, who I think really brings a sort of second parallel narrative with her music to the film.
Can you talk a little bit about that? So that Wait for a Horse is the part one. We have, yes. Sorry,
Yes.
we're seeing the reverse. Oh, it's actually, yes, now it's showing up that way. We're sitting on the flip side of the screen.
Yes, so Wake for a Horse, in many ways, the two parts of the film echo Afra and Aradia in this sort of existential journey. The first part of the film shows this wandering old poetess who is a sort of an oracle, who walks in these woods, pulling a horse's skull behind her, and then she, through a poem, announces the death of the horse, and that's the first part. And it really acts a bit as a prologue to the second part, that is two sisters who live in the desert in the American Southwest, set themselves in motion to perform a mourning ritual for the dead horse, and again through the gestures of their everyday merging with the gestures of the ritual, and it's a portrayal of sisterhood and grief through all these characters who are separated, but separated across time and space, but connected. I thought a bit the first part like a sort of a tale, or yes, a tale announcing the main action. But I also like to present the two parts separately. I think it's just a bit too two sides of one tale, if that makes sense. And that's the soundtrack. The original soundtrack was composed by Callie Malone, the American composer. We worked together on a few films, and she does these atmospheric organ pieces that are have something very ethereal and holy, and yes, accompany the whole film. And that's my mom playing the old oracle, by the way.
And we're not seeing it right now, but I was wondering if you could also talk about the third film.
Sure. This is a very short, Stabbing the River is a collaboration I did with my friend and fellow artist Curly Frisch, the artist from Switzerland. And this is this was a desire I had to really strip down my films from too heavy narrative parts and reducing the film to almost pure ritualistic gestures. And so in this film, Pearlie had the idea of making a piece stabbing a river, and so it's just this 2.5 minute loop filmed in Super 8 as well, of this repeated gesture that has something kind of vain and absurd, but poetic and almost tragic in a way, that as if following instructions to kill a river, like it would be possible. So this endless loop of that, and that's a project we did together as part of a residency in Adana in 2009.
So I was wondering, in all three videos, there is this almost like, whether it's a compulsion or actually a ritual that's been done before, like we never quite fully know what's driving the characters, but all three of them are very like action based. And I was wondering, are you researching ritualistic practices for these films, or are you coming up with them? And is it important for people to feel like they're maybe real or historical rituals, or is it really just about the characters kind of being in almost this like meditative state?
Right, so that's a good question, because I think just none of my films really try to document or reproduce existing rituals, although for Afra and Aradia, because I was speaking specifically of witchcraft, I wanted to research more some existing practices, but then I weave them into gestures I created for the film, and that's what I try to do most of the time. The rituals in my films are things that I design specifically for the film, and the films are really centered and really crafted around these gestures, and it's more, like you said, it's more a way for the characters, but even the actors, as we film, to see like something happen, with this proximity of the body, the intensity of how we film, and also filming them in the most reduced format possible, so it feels like the closest thing of just two people performing a ritual together. Most of the time it's just me filming and the people involved, and so it's a way of for me to initiate relationships on and off screens through these gestures.
On a technical note, you mentioned that this is your mother. What is the process like for you casting these people in these roles, or are you just working with friends, or how'd you go about it? It was not lost on me that in Aphrodite and Aridia, the women kind of look a little bit like you, in just in terms of like your build and your hair, and it really made me think of Shirin Nishat, like using sort of these stand-ins or doppelgangers. Not that they're supposed to be you, but there is kind of a slight resemblance. So I was just curious, the casting process. And
yeah, that's a funny remark. I'm because I do work mostly with friends, and if not friends, friends of friends. Like it's all people that are in my within my close circle, and the way I work is that I, especially for these more, I wouldn't say scripted films because there's no script, but films like Wake for a Horse and Afra and Aradia that have a bit more of a story component to them, I very early on in the process have someone in mind that I would like them to be the character, and so the character I really build halfway between things I see of these people, I perceive, and things I project onto them, and try to bring them to this space. And my mom in Wake for a Horse is a bit of a funny one, because at first I had a completely different kind of person in mind. I imagined it to be a young boy, androgynous boy, to be this oracle, and then I was I saw this show of this band called Dallas Acid, actually, who are pretty great. And the singer has this beautiful long gray hair. And I was talking to a friend. I was trying to understand how I wanted this character to be, because I had a bit of a crisis. I wasn't sure anymore of how I pictured them. And she made me talk what would be the ideal, um, how would they ideally move and be and look like. And I described her my idea, and she stops me and she's like, but do you realize this really looks like your mom who you're talking about? And so it was interesting to work with my mom, because she's a very private person and is really not into being in front of a camera. But in the end, I think it's also something I got to play with, to give that sort of distance and this mannerism in how she says the poem is also elements of her I incorporated in the film later on.
Thank you, Celia. We're going to move on to Lucas.
Quickly, I had a question for Celia. I'm curious about the process and how much of it. I know you said there was a lot of spontaneity involved. I'm just curious. How much of your film is like premeditated, or are you like working from a structure at all, or do you find it to be a really organic kind of process?
So the structure is really like in films like Hosseinrad specifically, it's really I have a few very precise images in mind of the rituals themselves and the gestures I want to perform and record, and then pretty much everything else is a bit uh, degrees of improvisation linking these moments together. And I don't, as I mentioned briefly, I don't work from a script, but I write a lot, but very short bits of poems over the months before filming, and then it kind of it came to compose the skeleton of the film.
Can I also ask a question? I just got curious, and I don't know if this makes sense. Well, it's two, but one's like a dumb question, but because I know you mentioned how important it was that the desert you're in New Mexico has been inspiring you. Does location influence the idea of ritual for you? Like, would you consider, like, if you set your movies in a completely different place than where you've set them in your other I don't know any location, don't trust me with geo stuff, but I don't know if that makes sense, but it was just something I was curious.
And also, there's no dumb questions, by the way.
That's
But
fine.
no, yes, absolutely. The landscape is also a place I need to have in mind early on, because it really orientates everything about the internal journey of the characters as much as they're wondering. So, for instance, in Wake for a Horse, when the two sisters in the second part go on to the ritual, they harvest clay to create a pottery that they cry into and bury in the desert. And so I wanted to shoot this in Arizona in the Painted Desert, because then they get to collect this red clay there, and the desert was very much the material of the ritual in that sense.
Nice. Okay, my question was, do you have specific films that you love that are all about like rituals and witchcraft? Or because when you said the gesture, my mind went straight to Weapons, where the whole thing is her like doing that one snap. So I didn't know if there was something that when you needed something to scratch your brain, you went to that movie or artist.
Well, I recently, it's not so much depicting rituals per se, but I got more and more into the films of Storm de Hirsch, who was an experimental filmmaker of the 60s, was close to Jonas Mikas and all the New York group of that time. And it's more like her films have something ritualistic, even in the way of filming of she would film a garden in a way that you feel your eyes so it's sort of psychedelically moving with her mind. And so I think that's the kind of works I would like to venture toward more and more.
Nice. Okay, thank you for letting me jump on to asking questions.
For those of you that haven't seen Luke's work, it's in the gallery next door, and he's got 4 pieces. He's got basically this series plus this piece, which is part of the same series.
Part of what I'm trying to achieve is a bit of an unphotographability, I suppose. So yeah, that's the video. That's the video synthesizer.
We can start with this one, Luke.
Yeah.
Since so Luke and I first collaborated on an exhibition back in 2015 when I was the director at Texas Women's University. And I had done a studio visit with Luke looking at his paintings, but he had these projection pieces set up in his studio. They were like little mini Frankensteins, and they were really quite perfect for the exhibition I was doing at the time. And I had always wanted to show them again. So when I reached out to Luke this time, I did definitely want to incorporate his paintings, but I really wanted to bring back at least one of these machines. So Luke, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of putting these together.
I kind of think of them as videos in a way. There really isn't any video footage or any thing that's being played on the projector. It's a sort of standard feedback loop that's this is achieved using a closed circuit camera that's trained onto the center of the projection. And there is a machine that augments a Mylar mirror using motors, and the projection is reflected from that surface onto the wall. Within that feedback loop, there's a sort of layer of disturbance that's added, and there's something about this particular generation of projectors and closed circuit cameras, because I haven't really found other models that that have the same kind of phenomena, but it sort of slows down the feedback process in a way, creating these very prismatic displays that feel almost liquid, and they just feel very biomorphic, and they're a little bit like video synthesizers. There's a kind of hypnotic quality about them, very kind of psychedelic in a way. I really like the idea of how these setups can be analogs for consciousness in a way, and contemplation and reflection and iteration, and the kind of fractaling nature of their qualities. I think they're kind of fascinating objects for contemplation, but they're also just unusual aesthetic objects, and I'm not exactly sure what the physics are that is happening with the light, the physics of the light. But yeah, it's something I've really enjoyed, and I actually hadn't set one up, and since a thesis exhibition in 2019. They're titled Adaptations, and it's there's a little bit of play with the idea of quantum physics, and this notion of kind of a black box ontology, that I'm one's not really sure what is on the inside, but by adding in different inputs, you get these different outputs, and so yeah, in a way, the physics of exactly what is going on is certainly something that, you know, somebody could explain, but that's not really what I'm interested in. I am interested in kind of playing with the dynamics of the setup to create different results. And so yeah, and thinking of like feedback as a kind of you know, I'm trying to stabilize an image, because if you've ever played with a feedback loop, it can be very unstable and create these very you know, like coarse sort of images that flicker so quickly that they're sort of hard to look at. I'm trying to create this like balance between a sort of like stable, undulating rolling of colors, but then also keeping it dynamic and moving in some way. So there's a kind of like aspect of positive and negative feedback happening there.
The first iteration of the horror show, we had a video and sound installation by Sean Miller, and slightly different than yours, but similarly, it was in sort of this long corridor, and the way it was displayed, it almost seemed like it was functioning as like the central brain or nervous system for the exhibition. Whereas with this one, it feels very much like, because you have to go down the hallway and then it's at the end of another hallway, turning that corner, that it really feels like the heartbeat or some kind of the soul of the exhibition. So there's an interesting kind of mirroring that unintentionally happened, because this is the way you wanted it set up.
Yeah, I like that. And I really have to thank Brian for helping out with the installation of it. I was really envisioning like a long corridor that you kind of walked down to reveal this thing, you know, almost like sort of a forbidden ceremony, or you know, like some kind of like laboratory or something. And it does, yeah, it does have that like heartbeat effect. It almost starts to take on very like organic types of movement. You know, it talks a lot about video without actually being a sort of video per se. But yeah, it like I wanted it to feel a little bit like a ritual, but also kind of not something that was right front and center, but maybe kind of happening in the background, or you know, in a sort of tertiary space, but somehow kind of connected in some way.
You and I have definitely bonded over the fact that we're the same age, kind of growing up in that weird space where it's like we're a little too young to be Gen X, but a little too old to truly be millennials. And so I keep thinking about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when I see this piece, with the heart and the excavation of the heart from the chest.
Oh my God.
Added kind of like a little bit of a touchstone layer, I think, for people of a certain generation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love that. And it continued to beat in his hand, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
It glowed too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm going to jump over to your other pieces. Sorry, there we go. So there's, just for everyone looking, so here are 3 of them. This is how we decided to install them. And then here is the 4th piece, which is on the adjacent wall. So I'm going to go back to this one, Luke. I was wondering if you could walk us through the story of the Polaroid that it started off this whole series.
Yeah, you know, in a way, it's perhaps a little like Celia's incorporation of her family members into her films. I started to incorporate images that you know, you would find in shoeboxes or photo albums. Previously, I was really interested in mass-mediated images, things that I didn't have a personal connection to, but something that everybody had a kind of popular recognition of. And so these were actually like images of a very kind of personal nature. And I do call them paintings. They're in a way like an absurd way of developing a photograph. So even before using maybe kind of creepy imagery, my process very much is about the spectral nature of mediation, and the desire of an object or a presence that can never quite truly be satisfied, and the politics and the sort of theories of representation and that sort of thing. And so that's the lens that I was seeing through, but what I wanted to see through that lens was my own kind of autobiographical history, potentially. And in a way, I sort of even subvert that notion, because like I do recognize myself in this photo, but I don't know who the other people are. It's not a memory that I actually have. There's just this like kind of photo of a thing. And what I liked about the photo is that it had this kind of family-like quality with it was almost certainly during Halloween. This person is anonymously wearing a Frankenstein mask. I'm dressed as a kind of budget Superman or something like that, sitting on his lap, and there's a like a kind of cartoonish witch decoration hanging on the wall, and that had this kind of like really weird sort of Trinity type family portrait kind of thing going on. Just struck me in a way that was like eerie, but also kind of endearing in some sort of odd way. And it started as a Polaroid, which you see on the top right, that I framed. And then the left-hand piece was the next piece in the sequence, which is like a layering of stenciled linear channels that I stack on top of each other to produce the color photograph effect. And then I extracted the face and did just sort of like a portrait of, I call him Frank. I don't know who that is, but I mean, I seem pretty calm. I'm not like super scared, so it was probably somebody I knew, I guess. And then that became the basis. I was just so taken with this image that became the basis of this larger painting. I think it's a 42 by 52, and incorporated some of the earlier techniques that I was using. It's what I call a single channel. There's just like one passage of lines, which are stenciled onto polyethylene sheets and then transferred onto canvas. And there's all sorts of like kind of alchemical processes and layers that affect the surface, so that it does definitely feel like it's engaging in the technical image, but also very tactile and not something that just sort of falls off a printer. And yeah, and that's kind of where that one came from. It's also this like repetition, this remediation that gets further and further away from like a moment that already didn't even feel like it existed. It was gone. I didn't have any working memory of it until I saw the photograph, and now it's just this sort of phantom fantasy of what that might have been, and just kind of replaying that over as an aesthetic exercise, and then also as sort of like this building of perhaps an artificial memory or mythologized memory in some way. There's also, it maybe seems kind of a little sad in some way. I think that there's always this sort of longing with photos of loved ones that will exist and stick around long after those people have died and left materially, and they like have these kind of like mementos left behind. And so I was reading this kind of interesting book recently by Dominic Petman. It's called Ghosting. If anyone has the chance, I really recommend reading it. It's ghosting. It's like sort of a contemplation on disappearance, and ghosting is this sort of like form of abandonment. And so there is that sort of idea happening in this picture too. And maybe a kind of, there's a lot of longing, and like I was really trying to hit all of the like emotions that I was taught not to like do in graduate school and that sort of thing, and whatnot.
Well,
so
it again kind of goes back to, a conversation you and I started having about 10 years ago, sort of that transition, like that little micro generation that we're of, where we grew up firmly in the analog world, but then we're young enough when things transition to digital that we kind of understand both languages in a way that I think is pretty unique to like about a 5-year span. And what's really interesting about your process is that it's not obvious whatsoever how you construct these pieces, but the end results, like when you look at them through your phone, everything kind of coalesces and they become very, very clear. But when you're looking at them in person, they're much more broken up, and they really start to remind me of like when I was younger and we had VHS tapes that my brother and I would watch again and again and again until the actual magnetic material was stripping off of the tape, and it would be so fuzzy and staticky, but you could still make out just enough of the image to watch the movie or like old home videos. So it really does kind of straddle that line between analog and digital, and sort of that the way things degrade over time, or if you think about a memory too much, you can actively change it because you're accessing it more than you really should be. So I've always found that really, really interesting and very poignant.
Yeah, there's something about the resolution too, that it's a very low resolution photograph essentially, if we're thinking of them through the lens of photography, and kind of perhaps like an apparition, or like the like Marfa lights, or like the spook light at the end of the road kind of thing. Like you can see it from far away, but the closer you get, it kind of vanishes, and you're sort of left with that architecture, the technical architecture that holds it into place. The lines or the Ben-Day dots or whatever kind of like technique is being used to transmit that image becomes the sort of subject matter. And as you walk back and that sort of falls away, the image snaps into focus. And so I play a lot with that like distancing idea, for sure. Yeah.
So I was gonna open it up to any questions. Anyone have any questions for Luke about process or imagery? Also, Celia or Staver, if you guys want to jump in, I can unshare the screen.
Celia, do you want to ask your question first?
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, me? Oh, okay. I'm such a painter. I'm going to ask, you're going to like kill me. I'm just going to say that already. Because I've been looking at these works online since we started this whole shindig. I thought these were paintings. Do you
Yeah.
just painting? Because
I
I
call
know
them
you were
paintings.
talking about like photography and memory, and I mean, I would want to hear more about your ghosting stuff because I love thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But do you look to painting history like Gerhard Richter's usage of the
Oh yeah.
photograph? Like, I mean,
Yeah. Big time.
I think
Especially
your work's
Sigmar
more
Polka,
interesting than
I
his,
think.
but
Oh, I mean, like the idea of thinking about photography through the act of painting, or thinking of painting through the act of photography. Yeah, I definitely consider myself, well, I consider these very much paintings and exercises in paintings, and they deal with the history of abstraction, the history of image making, a lot of like kind of classical histories. They're pigment that are smeared onto cloth material that's stretched over wooden frames, you know?
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and so I definitely call them paintings, but they have a lot of intervention with the apparatus in a way, different mechanical interventions. So
Yeah.
I think that they're satisfyingly decided in like exactly what they are, and that's they're
I
okay with that.
no, for sure. It just was so when you, because my first thing was like, is that acrylic? Is that oil? Is that like an asshole question to ask another artist? And then you're
No,
like,
no, no.
it's not painting. And I was like, I was delighted. I'm
Well,
so
it is
thrilled. I
painting,
love a surprise.
There's a lot of
Painting
like
through a
subjective
different,
mark making. And I actually like to embrace a lot of abstraction and kind of like, the collective unconscious or subjective kind of mark making and that sort of thing as the foil, or as a kind of contrast to technical image making. So yeah, that I find them definitely in that field for sure.
nice. That was my question. Also, can you say the name of that writer from Ghosting one last time before I forget?
Oh yeah, Dominic Petman. It's a
Okay.
ghosting on disappearance. It's really
Okay.
good.
I love a book on ghosting.
It's really good, yeah.
Celia, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I guess adjacent to Steve's question, or I noticed the work you do with the materiality of the image, and it's a quite poetic process that through this obsolescence of the image and in appearance poor quality of these previous recording devices like the Polaroids, but even the VHS looking aspect of your image, so the use of pencils, then you build new updated image memories, and I was just quite yeah, striking. And I was wondering how nostalgia is important to the rest of your work, or aside from this series, is this something recurring in your practice?
Yeah, I think so. Like, more than nostalgia, I do deal with things that evoke nostalgia, but I try to think of them in a critical sense, more than trying to just sort of, utilize familiarity to generate fondness or something like that. It's generally taking something that maybe is thought of in a way and then trying to see it in a different light in some sort of way. But what I like about things that oftentimes feel nostalgic is that they have a high level of familiarity to them. And so they naturally do have a kind of like story oftentimes, but that story could be seen from a lot of different perspectives in a way. I had a large series of paintings. For a while, I was solely interested in just kind of objects that had a multivalent aspect to them, depending on like the context of who was looking at them. Like they could signify vastly different things, depending on the like the subjectivity of the viewer. So yeah, I think that the familiarity, and also there is something really like bizarre about like the kind of saccharine artificiality of things at times that I find sort of interesting for some reason. But I try to be careful with it though, because it's a fine line to tread, you know, between just sort of pandering for people's like attention, and then yeah, so I like try to be careful to think critically about it a lot. But I myself just do have, it's perhaps a, you know, a nostalgic just aesthetic with having grown up with CRT televisions and that sort of process. And it's just something that through the experience of having watched TV as a kid, you know, like for many hours, probably way too many hours, like not as much as people are like looking at their screens now that have a different kind of light quality to them. But it absolutely, I feel like, generates this familiarity, this kind of like this object that we kind of go back to because it's like this comfortable display of light. And so yeah, it's a bittersweet relationship perhaps, because yeah, it's also like yeah, surveillance technology and is delivering all sorts of like you know, maladaptive tendencies in people, but it's just a very hyper present kind of aesthetic.
So Staver, can we move on to you?
I'll allow it today.
Thank
Let's
you,
go
Luke.
deal with some weird paintings. I'm joking. I love my paintings. I'm just an asshole.
Your
to my
screen.
things.
Wait,
They
sorry.
traumatized me in the studio. Also, you guys sounded so smart, and I instantly realized that I was not going to sound as witty as you guys. So forgive me for my silliness with this. Or get into the silliness with me. Or interrupt me if you have a question. I would love to have everyone feel included. Okay, we're starting with Rough Waters. So I have always been interested in mythology. I've always been interested in painting mythology. I really wanted to make works. Even as a kid, I'd go to the museum or I'd go to a gallery and I'd be like, but what's the painting about? What's the story? Like there had to be a story. And I'd be like, it's a model sitting there. It's his not my breast moments. So I really wanted to make stories about mythology, and all the works about mythologies I could think of were very specific. And I think it's kind of like what Lucas was saying about making it so you're not pandering to everyone, but also making sure that everyone could kind of get into it. And I realized, so I'd been doing these ghosts for like, I realized over 10 years now, because when I was an undergrad, because I used to be a figurative artist. Shocking. But I would make these little ghosts that I would call my friends' little deaths. I would follow them around. And they were these bizarre oil pastels. And I realized more and more that what I really loved in mythology was also, I love pop culture. Love pop culture. It's sick. I love it. But I realized that we have contemporary mythology in pop culture. We've all been ghosted, probably. We've all probably accidentally ghosted someone, even if we didn't want to. Look at those bad boys. So I started using the ghosts as sort of these characters because we've all seen ghosts. I think there's ghost folklore. Globally, I've been looking at Yoshitoshi's ghosts, and they're magical. look those up that if you haven't seen them, you guys. And I really like that there was sort of this anxiety and, you know, the world's on fire. And I kept sort of giving myself this lack of grace and being like, my work needs to be in response to something. We must be speaking. If we're not speaking, what are we doing? And then I make these paintings and later on I go, oh my God, what did I think Stormy Weather was about that I made in January? The politics, we are in stormy weather. But so I wanted these ghosts to sort of be these lonely creatures that were exploring the universe. There it's going. It's also kind of based on a book I totally read, which is Moby Dick, which I totally read. But I didn't. But I love the ending as the guy in the boat, in the coffin. And that kind of is how, you know, it feels when you wake up and you go and you look at the news and you're like, oh no, the weather is not clearing up for us. We're on this adventure together. But I wanted these ghosts to be things that we could all sort of instantly clock that this is a ghost. And also we're such a lonely society now. Like, and it's so insane to me to like, because you see it in real life how, you know, we're just so isolated. If I go down the street and I don't wear headphones, everyone's got their you know, I do it too. We're all looking at our phones. We're all, you know, in our own minds. And I really kind of wanted to make it this playful thing where it's poking at, well, we are kind of lonely and we are kind of going on this adventure, but this is, you know, an experience that we're all going with. Yeah, do you want to go to the next one, or does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to talk to me while I do this? So it's like a conversation. It's okay.
Well, so I was just going to reference something I talk about in the essay is that, you know, you've depicted these ghosts in that very sort of like, don't want to say low rent, but like vaguely
Scooby-Doo cartoon. It's low rent. We can say it.
You know, like
I'm
a
saying.
ghost. Like it makes me think of like E.T. when that character dresses up as a ghost and just looks so goofy. Or I was rewatching Beetlejuice recently, where Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin try to be scary, and the only thing they can think of is we have to wear sheets with eye holes cut out in them, because that's like the classic ghost. So these ghosts aren't scary. They're not meant to be scary, like, but they themselves are actually really trepidatious and concerned. You know, you have the one that's in this boat by itself, which with the head tilted down obviously seems very distressed. You have the ghost that you see on the screen here navigating this tightrope with all the sharks swimming underneath it. And then the hand holding the rope, so the rope's not even necessarily anchored. And then I can't help but feel just like all the empathy in the world for little floaty ghost who,
swimming lessons. Yes.
To go swimming or wants to go swimming, doesn't know how to swim. Like, in so many ways, these are very obvious statements about, like, you know, dipping your toe in the water or being in uncharted waters or crossing over this dangerous situation, which I think I feel myself coming out of it post-COVID, but I vividly remember maybe the first time I went to like a bigger gathering.
It was so scary, right?
Well, it was scary, but also the scariest part to me was we were all wearing masks and I couldn't be sure that the people I knew that I knew these people, and some of them I had known for probably like 15 years. But without that facial recognition, I was like, oh my God, is this who I think it is? And, you know, you just forget all your social cues. And it was really crazy how quickly you lose that sense of,
it's weird.
Of being able to answer a question without being like, oh my God.
That's how it feels to be an elementary school teacher.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's worse. No, I had a parent who got angry because I had fifth graders work together to make a mural for our school of the Great Wave print. And I got an angry message because I did not teach the children about Japan's isolationism and about what the political meanings of this wave were. And I was like, they're in 5th grade. I have an hour. They're in 5th grade and I have an hour. I can get into it. But it's also the same parent said to the school, you guys are too woke. So it's like, I see the bait, but there is an anxiety, especially now that I work with kids too. There's, I wear a mask and the parents are like, I get it too. These kids are like, no offense to children. Children are not gross. They open mouth cough though. And they eat boogers. And a lot of other things. I've seen it. It's not all children, the majority of them though. But for them, it's like, are you okay? Why? I'm safe. And like, there is this anxiety of wanting to be safe. I've had students who are like, are our windows bulletproof glass? Do you know this? And it was like, it's 9 a.m. I don't know shit. Like, I hope so for both of our sakes, or for but no, there is an anxiety, and there is this sort of desperation for hope and desperation for connectedness that but I never want my paintings to feel preachy. I want my paintings to feel like, when you were talking about like kind of low rent, like the sharks under the water, I think about like in cartoons and the superhero's captured and he's like being held over a lava pit with 2 sharks that are going to eat him. And he has to save like this sort of fake over the top anxiety that was like, you knew that your cartoon hero could get out of. I wanted to have these moments, or like the orange floaties, or, a boat on like big wavy water. Like, these are kind of these over the top dramatic images that are kind of embedded in cartoon and childhood like imagery that I love painting. I love ghosts. I love spooky stuff. And I've been painting this stuff and I've been watching, okay, let's see who's actually a real one. Who here watches Vanderpump Rules? I saw, was it silent or was there one person who like did a little A?
No, I don't think anyone here has been watching that.
Okay, that's great. It's not that you don't have to. It's not a work of art. It's not a great 10th season. But there is all of this dramatic stuff that's so stupid and it means nothing in the real world and it means everything. And I've been really happening like who's cheating on whose boyfriend with like, or whose boyfriend did what, or whose girlfriend did. It's a great show if you need good reality TV, though, I will say. Scandival, stop the world. But all that's to say, I love fake drama to like sort of remind you what the real drama is while not sort of putting that anxiety on the viewer. I don't know if anything I said made sense, but if it did.
No, totally. And it just occurred to me that not only are you using this classic ghost image, but I can think of probably several movies that kind of put characters in these perilous situations. Like there's the open water movie with the people who got abandoned by their tour boat and they get picked off by sharks. There are, like people lost at sea. And then looking at the other one, like you were talking about, it makes me think of Austin Powers when Dr. Evil is have laser beams attached to their head and they're like, you could just shoot him. And he's like, no, but I've got this tank full of sharks with laser beams.
What else are you going to do with a tank full of sharks with laser beams? You're going to commit crime.
Little Ghosty has like spooky forest, sleepaway camp vibes. So they are kind of
Sleepaway camps are the scariest camps. I'm going to say that.
They are kind of operating in these situations that are at once like metaphors for the real world, but are also using these horror movie tropes as backdrops, which I think is what makes them really delightful. I also think, like, not to be too sweet, but works like these, I have 2 kids, one is 12, one's 7, and like I showed them your paintings and they both just loved them. And it's like, this is such a great way for me to be able to have conversations about like, oh, this ghost is cute, but like, what does it mean if a ghost has to wear water wings to go swimming? Like it's just a great way to unpack a lot of ideas, which is why part of the reason I love horror so much is that it's kind of the ultimate medium, like mass market medium, to put a lot of content into, and you can kind of very superficial, or you could make it incredibly in depth. You can sort of a lot of different targets with it.
I read this was, I don't know where I read this, and this could be wrong, but you can tell how the economy is going by what monsters are popular.
Oh yeah.
I think vampires are popular when there's an economic crash, and zombies are popular when things are going. I don't know if the zombie part, but I know because Twilight in 2008. Well,
yeah.
And then we got the wolvies. I love a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm so pop culture. I've seen so many like people who will use. If anyone watches Bravo or Real Housewives or Vanderpumps, just come to me. But they use that quote a lot. They'll be like, "She's a wolf in sheep's clothing," and it's so like dramatic and terrifying, and it's like this complete insult. And I got really into that. I was like, "Yeah, that's the worst thing you could be on TV." And like, no, it's not. I mean, but I love a good monster, and I love a good thing that like you can like. Because whenever I would do old mythology paintings, and it was like, well, if you knew Rembrandt or Rubens or Goya, you'd get this painting. And it's like, well, I wanted it to be that if you knew nothing about art history, you could still say, I get this. I know what this means. I get the reference. Because I think art should be able to be complicated, but also accessible for people. And like, that's why it's been really fun to hear like everyone else talking about your paintings. Well, Lucas's work is a painting. Celia's work is a movie that feels very painterly. I'm just biased and I call everything a painting, but I love hearing your work because it feels so accessible and it makes so much sense. And the things you're saying are the things I'm thinking about when I see your work. So that gets so exciting for me. Not to give you guys your flowers during this time, but.
Well, Brian and I mean, I know I immediately fell in love with the top left guy's name is Cozy. And I mean, I love these wolves. They almost look like they're swathed in like barristers' wigs, like the wigs that people wear when they go to like parliamentary court.
Oh yeah.
White curly wigs or like founding fathers type wigs. So they feel really regal, and they're very their eyes are so hypnotic. His belly, and this very much reminded me of like, you can pet the cat's belly, but you might get bit or kicked depending on which kind of cat you have. So yeah, the wolf in sheep's clothing is very apt, but they're so we put them together in this way, hung the one on the wall and one on the pedestal to make them seem maybe like a family lineage in a way, like you find in like an old manor. So they do have this really regal kind of opulent sensibility.
Yeah. I mean, I was really excited that you really like Cozy, because Cozy was kind of a surprise artwork that came out of me just having, my brain just wasn't working. I was like, I need to like, what do I want to make, And Cozy like slid out of my hand sort of easily and kindly enough, sometimes a rare moment. I love that you see all these things like the barristers. I was absolutely watching the Traitors when that happened, but also a great scary thing. It's all related to reality TV somehow. I'm sick, but yeah, I love getting things where it feels, it was also, a lot of politicians felt very wolf in sheep's clothing during this time. So I'm not saying names, but we all can think of our own name, and I'll say, yes, that's the one. even if it's not one I was thinking of. But yeah, I wanted to leave them like a little open-ended just so you can kind of make it your own story. Because, you know, I would never accept any of this. Like, my mom would be like, this is a painting of Guernica. This is what it was about. And I'd be like, no, it's not. This is what it's actually about. And it's like, you know, so I want to let everyone, I love that you're able to like create your own story or like lineage of this work to, you know, all that while still also seeing the wolfies getting cozy.
So I wanted to open it up for any questions or comments, and Luke and Celia, that goes for the two of you as well. So just let me know. We can switch.
I would love to talk a tiny bit more about Staver's other paintings if you to the sharks.
Which ones?
The sharks.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, I have the good fortune of giving a handful of tours of the show. And so, you know, I talk to people about the work and, you know, how I get to experience it is how I get to experience it. And, you know, what y'all have given me about it is true. And I, you know, I try not to lie about your work. But
you could.
I probably do, and I will some more. But like these paintings, I really like quite a bit. And and I, when I tour a group, you know, we talk about like how they have a storybook quality, and they're charming, and they're disarming, and they're terrifying, and they, you know, they operate the way a good story does. In that, like, well, you know, this is clearly a ghost story, and the ghosts are in perilous situations, and, you know, it's comic that, like, oh, a ghost would have to wear floaties. And it's also doubly tragic that, like, well, these ghosts are clearly dead. They don't have to worry about dying, and they're terrified of the sharks that are going to eat them. So it's comforting to know that even after we're dead, we're not going to be afraid of dying. So thank you for that gift.
I'm glad I didn't even think about I love that. I had not even thought of that. I love that. You're welcome. Yes. I was definitely thinking about that. We're gonna pretend that I already thought about that. Wait, did you want me to respond to you saying that, or was?
Oh, please.
Oh, okay.
I meant
Sorry, I
it.
get so bashful talking about my paintings. If you couldn't tell. Yeah, I really wanted them to be a little nervous, and I think one of my friends had a joke where they said, "I think this is you punishing all the people who have ghosted you." And like giving an explanation. Oh, they ghosted you because they had to take swimming lessons, or they were getting eaten by sharks to not make me feel, which I hadn't thought of. But I think I also wanted to create this sort of empathetic response to it. Like, I remember there was this post somewhere where they said that like there's this thing where people will see an inanimate object and they will feel bad for it. Like if they see a damaged box, they might buy the damaged box object of something because they're worried that no one will buy it because it's damaged. So like even if, and it's not even a human. So I wanted you to sort of, as the viewer, to have like a little like, oh no, are you safe? Like, because I think again, it's just nice to have a moment where you're worried about this weird creature, and then all of a sudden you get into your head like, well, why is this ghost having to have like floaties on? Like, I don't know. So I like that you can have this anxiety, but you can also sort of be like, they're gonna be fine. It's like I can't do paintings where an animal is dead. I try to do a thing of like unicorn hunters, and I just tried, and I just was like, this is too upsetting. I can't do a dead animal painting. The unicorn has to be alive. I'm great at the cloisters because I just cry over the unicorn getting hurt. So I never want any of my paintings. I want them to be in danger, but I never want them to like not survive the danger. I wanted to be like a close call.
So, Staver, you actually hit on the perfect segue to our next artist. who very much has no. Where is?
Get
There
that
we go.
out.
So Molly, I'm gonna leave this up while you're speaking. And Molly's piece, for those of you in the room, this is the other component. So this painting right here is the companion to this film installation over here. So Molly, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your work.
For sure, should I turn around?
Yeah, do you want to come sit up here?
Well, hi guys. So, well, first I want to say that I view my painting kind of as something that happened, and the film is kind of like the aftermath. And when Brian and Danielle had reached out to me, it was just kind of perfect timing. I was on my way to Taiwan to visit family. And so I was getting a lot of like old feelings, and as lots of artists do, I use my art as a form of expression. And I, hey, any East Asian people in here? What's up? Um, as you know, in most dysfunctional family dynamics, people don't like to communicate, they don't like to confront, and they like to protect their abusers, the abusers within the family, and at the price of the victim, in a way perpetuating and becoming the abuser themselves. So for me, that's what the film was, and the abuse is the painting, which is roadkill. And this piece is titled like "Do You Fawn?" and I wanted it to be a way for the viewer to see themselves in the roadkill, and consider their position in whatever. And in the film, it starts off with, I'm gonna call myself the character because it's me, but it starts off with the character praying to their ancestors and up at the shrine and looking, reflecting uh, within themselves at their grandparents. And it's there's a certain like status quo that needs to be held in dysfunctional family dynamics, and the people that either don't fit the status quo or are victims to abuse within the family, whether that be one person or all, um, can cause a lot of fawning in the victim, and that's kind of the whole point of both pieces is the act of fawning, and basically doing whatever to appease the abusers and even people who haven't abused them just out of fear of conflict, danger. It's just like a safety response. And the film is kind of like a way to, it's like a way for the character to process what had happened to them. And it's not pretty stuff. I do want to also point out the actual, because it's very personal to me, the display. Uh, the display, the panels is actually something that I had like grown up playing with. I would poke holes in it, and it was something that I played with alongside my abuser, who would be on the other side. And I kind of wanted the viewer of the film to stand in front of panel, seeing the fawn on the other side, so you're kind of you're in the footsteps of the abuser and watching like everything happen to the person that you did or didn't do this to. Very abstract, very abstract. And similar to the other artists, I was actually lucky to have family in the film. Oh, hey, they're right there. Those are the family members, and they were a little petty, yes, I know, but they were actually the people that perpetuated in my situation. And for me, this film was like a way to communicate to people who are not capable of having and holding space and understanding a situation, and repeating the cycle. And yeah, and I did a little bit of multimedia, super passionate. Professor Kim just walked in just earlier. She actually inspired me to start trying film and working in multimedia. So I incorporated a bit of that, and essentially, as the film goes on, the victim of the piece participates in their own abuse by continuing the cycle of fawning and staying in an environment that will allow them nothing but abuse. And there is imagery of them consuming their own heart, which is kind of the act of destroying yourself, just like others. Yay, hooray!
That's what it's about.
So, I have to say, I mean, I was familiar with the word fawning in terms of like fawning over someone or something, but it was only, after we had spoken and then I went and did some research that I learned the psychological term for fawning, which for those of you who don't know, essentially means acquiescing to your abuser's demands so that you in turn kind of almost become your own abuser, or you help perpetuate the cycle of abuser. So if you're being abused by someone who will only let you eat certain things or will only let you act a certain way, if you give in to those as a way to avoid punishment, you then give them that power and you give up part of yourself, and it becomes this very cyclical thing. And I think that's something that to many different degrees everybody can relate to. We've all given up parts of ourselves to make someone else happy. So that was a really interesting way to think about this. But I was also interested in, because I knew you had filmed a lot of this while you were traveling. Did your family understand what they were doing? Did they feel a certain way, or were they just like, it's Molly?
I did keep it pretty ambiguous. The people don't love to hear that they suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty ambiguous. It was clear though that it was horror and that there was going to be like hard things to see, maybe not so pretty things to see, especially in like East Asian culture. There's a lot of like substance use imagery in it, and in East Asian culture, like that is such a taboo, and it is something that I shared with my family, and again, like the perpetual cycle of silence and judgment and abuse continues, but in a way I'm still able to be seen by people who are not willing to hear. You know what I mean?
Would you mind turning the screen so people can see you? I just want to make sure I feel it now that they've maybe gotten a... There we go. Hey guys, you're still there. So I know you can't quite see Molly's video, but it's right back over here. I think we have it on the Instagram, right? Or parts of it on the Instagram. I don't know if it's possible to turn it too much, but...
It's a really lovely installation with a screen and a light behind it and a silhouette of antlers, and then the film plays on a small monitor, and it's an old Jinky monitor, and so it's really, I mean, I feel it's like a wonderful transition from Luke to Celia, and Molly is generation behind y'all, so yeah, I think it's a good companion grouping.
Laura, I was wondering if, not to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts or comments. What? I guess I did put you on the spot. Everyone shove a microphone in your face.
Hi, Celia. Hi. I miss you. And hi, Molly. I'm just glad to see the pair. Actually, hearing you kind of like the whole like the darkness of the space, and also having the work kind of speak and do its thing versus having wall text for the exhibition on its own. It seemed like you were trying to, in terms of curation, trying to create an ecology of the pieces, letting them speak for themselves, and also light being a big part of the show. If I understand it correctly, where there's sound, light, and also anticipation for something to happen, maybe towards something that is, all work is kind of anticipatory towards reaching somewhere, reaching a light, or reaching like a place of hope, or somewhere that the aesthetic of the space, the darkness, does not reach. Yeah, I'm just excited to see everything kind of having come through together, and and also in terms of especially Molly's piece, I just the painting as a, because I saw you painting it as part of the process, and I was just curious, actually, as a question of what came. It seemed like this piece came first, but also what it meant to be kind of materializing it through paint, or if that's kind of going to be your ongoing research process of embodying and exploring your personhood, your experience, and courageously and as a brave survivor of like how do you kind of see the multimedia works entangling with the more traditional, the more kind of meditative style of having headphones on, and creating these pieces that are in response to the more maybe like precarious mediums, or things that show you as yourself. Yep.
Oh, thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, it looks like Staver. Well, so let's move on to, we were talking about sound. We've been hearing lots of sound. So let's move on to James Talambas, and then we're going to wrap up, and James is going to perform. I'm very excited. So, James, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about this piece that we've been hearing all night, but we can't see.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. I mean, this is exactly what we wanted.
Well, a lot of my work has to do with resonance and resonating architectural spaces or objects, and turning what is an invisible art sound into something that's tangible and something that is more physical, that you can touch and feel rather than just hear. And so for this one, I wanted to create something that was just invisible, a ghost of a work. If you walked over there, you would think there's nothing there while it's silent like this. It's a lot of my work. I like to talk about political stuff, but I don't like to be too heavy-handed with it, or too direct. So for this piece, about 10 years ago, there was the giant tent city. I don't know if anybody was familiar with that, but tent city had thousands of homeless in an encampment underneath the highway in downtown Dallas, and they decided to kick all of them out of that particular space because some new condos moved in across the way from that particular view of the encampment, and so and those people were rich enough to decide that, or to have the connections to, have that happen to all of the homeless there, and so they were dispersed. It happened over about 2 weeks, and me and a friend of mine who was going to make a film about that, he's a documentary filmmaker, Ramtin Nixad is his name, and I was doing all the interviews and sound design for that, and recording of these interviews of the homeless in there. So we have probably about 2 weeks worth of interviews of all, hundreds of homeless there, and them making their lives in their community there, and what it means to be a, not just determined by your homelessness, but also by your, that you're a whole human, and there's a whole community there, and they're having whole lives there. This is kind of I use that as the source material, them being kind of invisible ghosts of our community, and use that as the source material for that, for the work there. Then taking their voices through audio manipulation, taking kind of the tones out of their voice, so that it still, at certain points, sounds like talking, but it's, you can't hear what they're saying because, loosely to speak about how we don't really are ever able to hear, what the homeless population's speaking about. So it's not my first piece about homelessness. Probably I've done a few. When I was a teenager, I was homeless for about 1.5 years, and so it's something that I tend to talk about a lot. It had a pretty big effect on me, and I was never in the worst situation. After talking to hundreds of other people who've experienced that, by no means was my story the worst that could be out there. There's a lot worse, but it gave me perspective on that, and something that I think that we could do a lot better to in our society. So
it was interesting because just a little bit of inside baseball about putting the exhibition together. Like we had spoken to James about this piece and had these ideas, and we knew he was going to be traveling all fall, so it was a collective team effort putting this piece together while he was in Japan. So we were literally like texting across time zones, having friends drop things off. One of my students from the gallery class spent like an entire afternoon literally inside that wall putting things together. And before all of the equipment and the sounds were delivered prior to us even really talking about what the piece, like the actual structure of the piece. And so I started thinking about it and writing about it, and the first thing that struck me was like, you make the architecture of that wall sound massive compared to its actual size, and it made me think of this book called House of Leaves, if anyone's ever read that, which is, it's about a great many things, but in essence, it's about a home that is much, much larger on the inside than it is on the outside. And so I really was thinking a lot about that with these kind of monstrous, maybe vaguely human sounds emanating from that, but then coming to understand that it was actually voices of unhoused people, and the title specifically references the highest ever count of unhoused people in the United States in, was it 2024? I think it was one March evening in 2024. That was the highest ever recorded count of unhoused people. And so that definitely, thinking about just architecture and then unhoused people led me to thinking about Michael Rakowitz's really incredible series called Parasite, where he created these inflatable kind of balloon structures that could be attached to the exterior vents of buildings where hot air is being passed out. And so it's this really simple, kind of ingenious, not solution, but sort of like stopgap, like this hot air is escaping a building. We can provide temporary inflatable housing that people can then pack up and move around. And then thinking about these tent cities, and that these people are being kind of rendered invisible by sheer fact that they're in the wall, but that's how we want them to be, because that is, talk to anyone who goes to like San Francisco or something like that, and the chief complaint is like, there's too many homeless people on the streets, or there's too many this, or, look at that view, like this city used to be great and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's this invisible epidemic that we have. And so there's just, so many things I was thinking about, but it's been really fascinating to have this play in the gallery, like these sort of sounds emanating from the wall. And, I teach in the space and like trying to talk over it. And then it's like, well, no, you just got to learn to like navigate it. And then it becomes this idea of navigating these spaces. And I mean, I was just walking past, I don't know exactly what location you're referring to, but I went to the fair, last month with my kids, and walking under that underpass by Expo Park, there used to be 2 massive encampments under there, and now it's just empty and there's nothing, and it's such a wasted opportunity. Anyway, my rambling. What's that?
My gallery's down there, and so like they cleared out for the fair.
Oh, okay, because I thought they had kicked everybody. And there was also that one, like when you're going from 75 to get onto 30, there was a huge one under there, and they've kicked everybody. I think there's like one person that keeps popping up over there, but they've just, all for what? To store construction material, to have like this beautiful view of dirt while you're
nice
driving.
dirt.
Like, I mean, it's I have no solutions, just stuff to say, but it was really quite, I don't want to say a treat because it's a deep, dark subject matter, but it was really, really wonderful to kind of unpack that piece. I was thinking about it.
Yeah, I think you're speaking of something that is like, it's the epidemic of unhoused people is it's ever present, and we just sort of walk around it, and we just kind of have been dealing with this as we're talking, and we just sort of, it's there. Everybody knows it's there, but we can't really do much about it. So another thing I wanted to say is just shout out to Camille for helping with delivering the stuff and soldering a lot of the wires too while I was gone. That you said something about making the wall feel a lot bigger than it really was. A lot of my work, I like to actually. I'm so glad that everybody's bringing up painting, and I'm in a panel of painters here, that because I consider myself, painting that wall, right? So it is a painting that it's supposed to feel like it's ahead of you and in front of you and around you, and a lot of the times when I'm doing the sound design for these things and manipulating the audio, I wanted to have these strokes here and there, sharp strokes and broad strokes, and then different colors coming in and out. Something hope that you'll see in the performance. It's more about painting more than it is about like doing something, performing cool things. I'm gonna encourage people to walk around in it, and I hope that people walk around the installation over there of the wall, because it should feel like you're looking at different colors and different shapes and stuff, more than anything. So sound painting.
Well, I don't want to keep us. Does anyone have any questions, comments? I'd like to get the performance going if we're all good. For those of you virtually, I can keep the computer going. We can wheel you over into the other room, or you can say goodnight. It's totally up to you. Are you ready to go, or do you need a few minutes to get going, or?
Yeah, just let me get a couple things. I'll excuse
Okay.
myself.
Well, hit the bathroom if you need to. Grab a water if you need to. And then we'll reconvene over there in just a minute. Anybody feel like sticking around, or you guys gotta go? I know, Staver, it's late for you.
I almost
Got
hear
it.
nothing, so I'm going to have to cut the call. But thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure, Lucas and Staver and everyone, to chat with you.
Thanks
was
for
so-
sticking, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so fun to hear you guys talk about your art. It was really, in a world of AI where everything is fake, it's so good to hear about people making real things. It makes me feel less crazy. So I know I sounded insane today, but I really loved hearing all of you guys. I have to go because I have to emotionally prepare for 3-year-olds who are vicious. I don't know why I get sound effects or visual effects. Awful. So if you hear screaming from across the country, it's me. It's me versus all of them. I'm not going to win. And have a lovely night, you guys. Thank you again. It was so fun. It's so great to be part of a great team.
Thank you all for being in the show. I love each
Yeah.
of your work in the show. And Celia, I love having your piece float in the middle of the wall. I'm sad that y'all couldn't see how we get to watch you with this happening next to it. And Luke, I completely love your hideaway feedback loop that we have to go down there and stay where I love all of your paintings. They're quite beautiful.
You guys are giving us all big heads over here. How are we going to like fit on the screen with our heads gassing up?
Well, we'll make sure we do a video walkthrough of the space before the exhibition closes. So stay tuned.
Ooh.
All right. Good night, guys.
Have a nice performance. Have fun. Bye, you guys.
Bye.